Hey, welcome back to the UPRAWR Podcast. Today's guest is Julie Weir. We talk about how she got started in the industry, how she became the head of music for Nations for Sony, how she started her own record label, Visible Noise, and signing bands like Bring Me the Horizon, Lostprophets, and Bullet for Valentine. So, let's get into it.
To just get started, how did you get into the industry and where did you start with it?
I think my industry journey, God, I sound like an idiot, but I think I'd always wanted to work in music because, I mean, caveat, I'm not remotely musical. I can't play an instrument.
Same as me.
I sing badly, but enjoy it, you know, and it's just never really been my thing to be on that side of it all. But my granddad was really musical and he was great with music as I was growing up. So I'd always had an interest in music and I'd always had like an infinite memory for the lyrics and stuff like that. So I always wanted to work in something creative, ironically. But my parents weren't mad keen on the idea of me going to college to do art or anything like that. So I went through like a traditional college route. And of course, when you go to uni, you meet your peeps, don't you? You find like sort of your tribe or whatever you call it. And I went to university at Salford. And it was just, I'd joined the rock society and stuff like that there. And I'd always been into slightly more left field music, really. Because, I mean, I'd grown up listening to Northern Soul as a kid, which is weird, really, when you look at it now. But then I'd got into like sort of mod and the jam. But then I went off into like sort of rock, alternative, goth and punk, which is where, as you can tell, I've completely moved on from that.
Yeah.
But my journey was definitely being so bloody minded. I go in a certain direction that's only my own. So I went all the way through college working with like sort of artists where I would take photos of them, write bios and stuff. And then when I left uni, I moved to Leeds and ended up working in a record shop called Nail, which was industrial metal and hardcore. I also worked with a club called Asylum there, which was brilliant at Leeds Poly for years, possibly one of the worst hangovers I've ever had in my life from that, I think. I was dying. And then I went from there and I came to London. And I got an MA scholarship to do basically film and popular culture. So I came to London. Honestly, it wasn't about the academia. It was about me getting to London. Yeah. And then I've been here ever since, really. So when I finished my master's, I applied to various labels. It wasn't like now where you've got to get an internship and it's really hard and you've got to know people and stuff like that. I just wrote to some people and I was lucky enough to get into one. And I've just made the journey through that, really.
So what was that first job doing then at that label?
God, what wasn't he doing? I remember I went for the job interview. It was a place called Vinyl Solution in Portobello. And the job interview was for, I don't think they knew, to be quite honest. I think it was basically, let's just torment the young northerner, to be quite honest. But I got on with the people and it was really to be merchandising manager. So I'd learned all of that kind of stuff and learned like sort of bands on tour and flash printing and all that kind of stuff. So I know more about merch than I should really to work in the music industry on the label side. But I went to do that and then continued on and became label manager for a black metal label called Cacophonous, which was Cradlefield, Dimmer Borgir, Balsagoth, Gehenna, like cult names. Did that for a few years. And then, I'll be honest, black metal wasn't my first love, to be fair. But my boss at the time had just said, do you want to do your own thing? Because you've clearly got a knack for it. And I set up Visible Noise in 1998. And that's where things started for me, a bit more on my own terms, really.
I mean, Visible Noise was huge. From my point of view, because I would have been, I don't know how old I was when I sort of became aware of it, 17, and it was just the coolest label that any of us had seen.
I find this absolutely, when you're sitting in an office on your own, it was me on my own doing it. I find it astounding that it reached as many people as it did, to be quite honest. And it still makes me slightly teary now thinking about stuff like that and thinking it did affect people, but it never fails to shock me when people say stuff like this, and I think it's beautiful.
I mean, when you set that up, then it was your label. Yeah. Was it backed by this other label? How did that work?
It was backed by a guy called Alain Delamato, who's actually a film producer more than anything. He started off as a photographer for NME, went into working with Japanese and Hong Kong film, and then he always had a passion for music, but he'd worked with artists like like Napalm Death and like some Bolt Thrower and people like that early on. And the label just kind of evolved and transcended, and he didn't have anybody to run the label part of it at the time. So it was a happy accident, to be quite honest, like a lot of my life, really. But yeah, he backed it, but I was just left alone to do whatever I wanted. But then I was made director. So it was effectively like spending my own money, which I'm still very cautious with now, to be honest.
So what did that look like then? What was the first step in being like, okay, now I'm allowed to set up a label and I've got some backing to do it with? What were the steps that you had to go through to actually have a label from the conception of the idea?
Speaking to distributors, speaking to PR people, just doing a lot of the work myself, actually. I think really the first thing that we'd set up, it was a distribution deal with Pinnacle. No longer exists. I think everybody moved over to places like ADA now. But that was the main thing for us. So it was like a route to market. And at that point, it was mainly physical as well. Yeah. We didn't really have the Spotify or anything like that. I think we had Napster, but people were frowning on it. No names mentioned. But that was the first major jump off for us, securing distribution, which to be fair wasn't a hard conversation because we already worked with distributors through Cacophonous.
Yeah.
But we just had to ramp it up slightly because Visible Noise was a bit more of a commercial operation, shall we say.
So when you signed the first band, what did that look like?
I'm trying to remember because it was either Primary Slave or Kilkus. I think it was Primary Slave. Or was it Kill to This? One of them three. Can't remember off the top of my head. Should have done the research before I came out, shouldn't I? For me, it's always been about signing what I like personally, because I think if you don't sign what you like or you're not working with what you like, you've got to fake it, and that doesn't really work for anyone.
Yeah.
And also, you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people as an indie as well. I mean, especially it was just me. It wasn't a team of people. So 24/7, it was just me dealing with 90%, 99 problems. I had every one, you know what I mean? but it's just a process of finding the talent, finding the people, not working with idiots, which I have learned a multitude of times over my career, and generally just getting your head down and getting on with it, being bloody minded, not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. With signing those bands, was it that you had an idea in your head of what you were looking for, or did you just see them and think, that's it?
I would honestly say early days, it was panicking. I don't know what I'm doing. And it's kind of learning from, I wouldn't say any were mistakes. I think they were all learning curves. And I worked with some really fantastic people. In fact, somebody from Primary Slave has literally just come back into my life now. And he's an insane creative. And hopefully I'm going to work with him on something soon. He's an incredibly, incredibly talented artist in his own right.
Awesome. So what was the first band that you had commercial success with then? Because there's been some really impressive ones.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly say it would be the word that most people will avoid now, actually. And I would say it would be Lostprophets. I mean, we had we did have success with Kill to This, but not on the scale that you would have described that as, really. But I mean, the Lostprophets story was, the whole story was like 16 to 18 years of my life. It was long.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing them at the Barfly, which is the Camden Falcon at the time, which is now Flats, I think, near Quinns in Camden, just over there, actually. But I remember seeing them and thinking that there's definitely something. You know, when something really hits you, it hits you in your chest and your stomach.
Yeah.
And you get, it's all about the feels, and you genuinely feel like there's something there. That was 100% what happened there. And I remember there was a guy called Sean who used to run a magazine called Organ. That's a long time ago. You're a lot younger than me. But Sean was there as well. And I remember panicking and thinking, oh my God, I've got to get this band. Because he would sign everything to Organ Records. So I had to kind of sort of grit my teeth and just go in and be a bit scrappy and fighty about it. Not in a bad way, obviously, you know.
What did that label look like then? That deal look like? Because were you expecting them to be huge? Did they have management? Did they have anything else around them? Or
they had no management at the time. It was, crikey, it was quite some time before Q Prime came on board there, actually. I would say it would be about at least 18 months to 2 years, because we released Fake Sound without anyone else being involved. That was just literally me and the band, and really good PR people and radio people who I still work with now, actually. But there was literally nothing else around it. The one thing that I will say about that is that the Welsh communities, the Welsh media, all of the TV people, there was a thing up there called the Pop Factory that was insanely supportive. So all of that really, really helped. And having like sort of, I mean, Wales is a very small place. I mean, Wales is like a town compared to a lot of places, you know. But that element of national pride that they brought was absolutely fantastic, because it's almost like everybody knew somebody in the band, you know, or they were related to Tom Jones or something like that. It's a tiny, tiny place, but everybody, there was a genuine outpouring of really goodwill for them.
It's amazing with the whole Welsh thing, because obviously there's so many good bands that come out of it, but it seems to be the only place where if you play a local show, if you're local and you play a show, people actually want to turn up and support it.
Yeah.
Like if you're a local Birmingham band where we're based, no one wants to support your show. Like no one's going to come and watch you. Like you'll do better somewhere else. But in Wales, they pour it. They all support each other in a much, much bigger way than they do here.
It's a really like sort of holistic view that I think. But I also think it's to do with the fact that, no offence to Birmingham, it's a big old city and you get a lot of bands coming through there. I mean, places like sort of Ponty and stuff. I mean, I remember going to see Henry Rollins doing stand-up at Ponty Muni, and it's one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever seen, because it was absolutely packed and people didn't know what to do, you know, but people will go because it's an event. Yeah. I mean, I'm from a tiny town in Cumbria, it's called Workington, and we had this thing years ago, and this is possibly something to do with why I'm doing what I'm doing now. We did a thing called Workington Rock, which is not the catchiest name for a festival, right? But I mean, also the bands were things like Magnum and stuff like that, Blaze Bailey, you know, all that kind of stuff. But because it was there and there was something happening, I think there was like 25,000 people there. It was insane. In the rugby ground, it was packed and it was boiling up. And it was amazing, but people will go because there's something like that going on. I mean, we've got a theatre in the centre of town called the Carnegie, right? The Carnegie in Workington. It's always, when people say Carnegie, people always think, Carnegie Hall, yeah, bougie. They didn't realise that like sort of they're going to play somewhere where Zentrix ripped all the seats out in 1987. It's a bit janky. But people will go and play there, and it's just, again, you'll get 500 people to a show there as well. White Evans Civic Hall, same thing.
Well, I mean, when I was like 16, I went and played a show with my band, and we wouldn't have been able to pull 3 people anywhere in the country other than in Wales. Yeah. And no one knew who we were, but it was sold out.
Where did you play?
But no idea. I've got no idea, but we were mind blown. We couldn't believe that there was anyone actually watching us.
It's got a sense of community is really important.
It's amazing. I mean, how did that translate then when you signed the band, with there being a huge amount of support coming from there? Did the rest of the country respond to that, or was it just like really unbalanced for a little bit of time?
I think press-wise we did quite well, and also their agent, we got them with Mike at ITB, so their agent was doing a really good job of getting them on loads of shows and things like that. But Wales is definitely instrumental, but also like a really amazing publication called the PRP. Do you remember this? Pimp Rock Palace? It was like you would call it like, it's almost like a new metal blog that was just online. So it's where like loads of people went to find out about new bands, and they were so insanely supportive. But it was based over here, but it was huge in the States. So it created this like sort of ripple effect that kind of hit London, Cardiff, and like Los Angeles. So we got flown out to LA because there was a big bidding war with loads of large labels, shall we say, over there.
That's pretty cool. How quick was that commercial success then, from signing them to it being a famous band?
Depends what you careful what you define as famous. But I would say it was still about 3 years before things really started moving, because it would have been on Start Something there really. And I mean, from the beginning, it was signed in 98. I can't even remember when Start Something came out, but I would say 3 years before things really, really started moving, and we were looking at like sort of, you know, number 2 albums and stuff like that. It's and there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears that went on behind the curtains there as well. There's a lot of work. And I mean, there's a lot of people in that band who put in so much work. I mean, Lee Gaze is probably still one of the best guitarists, I think, that's ever existed. And I don't think he's ever had the credit for it, really.
It's a shame that everything they've done since is sort of tinted.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to, I mean, obviously it's hard for them to come out and do anything new and it get recognition, because if they use their name, then it instantly is tainted. And if they don't use the name, then they're starting from scratch. It's
really
a shit situation to be in.
I mean, when the No Devotion project came out, which I really, really love, and the Kerrang Award was given for that.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the nicest pieces of validation that the industry could have given them, because it was still recognising the fact that they're great musicians, they're great writers, they create great tracks, and it's something that was almost given back to them when everything had been taken away. I mean, most of them still work in music. I mean, Stu's got a studio. Lee's still doing, like, sort of... Lee runs a coffee shop, or he did. I don't know what he's doing now. I must speak to him today, actually. I'll be texting him this afternoon. But and then Mike's in LA. He's doing some stuff with interior design. And Jamie's an artist. And obviously Luke is in Lowlives. God, I was like an ad. Lowlives, great band, by the way, and great record. Not even signed to me, but it's a really good
But you're pushing it.
Yeah.
So when obviously the shit did hit the fan with everything,
Yeah.
on your side of things, what did that look like from you getting the call and finding out what was happening? And
I remember getting the call. It was the 12th of December, and I think it was 2012. God, honestly, she's got me dates ready. But I remember I was standing outside Papagoni's on Stroud Green Road, and I got a call from the manager saying there was something, and it wasn't actually what had actually happened. It was just like, it's not good. And I'm like, okay. And we were just gearing up to do another, like, sort of big project with them as well. And then things kind of spiraled out from that. And that was a long process, I think, really. But speaking to the lads, it's like, something like that happens, and you would imagine people would know what's going on, or it would be in plain sight or anything like that. But it seemed a lot of things had been happening without people knowing about it. But
I mean, the level of how fucked up it was, like, sort of, I think, validates them not knowing. Because, like, there's no way any sane person could have even an inkling of what's going on.
Yeah.
And ignore it or support it. So, there's just no way that any of them had a clue.
I mean, everybody's a real straight down the line person in that band, and that's the thing. And I mean, out of all of the things that could have happened, there's no way I thought it would have been anything like that either. Yeah. And it's a real shame, because that was one of the biggest bands of that era, and it affected a lot of people's lives. And I mean, there's people walking around with tattoos and stuff on their bodies, you know, and it's insane.
There were huge, like, I can't remember, Reddit threads or something of people having to cover the tattoos, because there was like thousands of people that had tattoos.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still loads of Reddit threads, and I mean, there's still stuff that pops up on YouTube daily on it. And I can't even get it out of my, out of my feed. Do you know what I mean? So it's a daily reminder of what happened, and it's awful. But I mean, for the label, it was absolutely catastrophic, because I'd spent 16 years of my life, and at that time it was like, nearly half my life working on it and working with them. And it was just, it's just really, really hard for them to have everything taken away, especially because they'd invested. I mean, these are people with wives, kids, everything. It was a good living for them, and everything like that's taken away in one go. And you got to reevaluate your life and think, why have you spent all the time doing that? It's horrendous. And for such a great bunch of creative people as well. We had some great fun working through those years, honestly. Mad things happened. All of the stuff in LA, and oh God, it was insane. It was brilliant. I mean, I just don't think it would happen now. That world's changed. That world's gone. And I'm glad I lived through it as well, put it that way.
How different is it for you now then? If you were to take equivalent talent and do the whole thing again, how different do you think the process would be, given that the world is so different?
Oh my God, it's harder to cut out the noise, I think, because it's easier to get to market. It's harder to be successful. Yeah. I mean, if you look at all of the bands that are on Spotify with less than 1,000 players, it's absolutely soul destroying. TikTok, which I'm sure will be a fun day today, but it's really important for us as an A&R tool. But I still look at a body of work, not just a track. Tracks are important, tracks drive a campaign, but for me, an artist still needs to be writing and producing material themselves. Maybe a little bit of help, you know? Yeah. But for me, a true artist is somebody who does everything on their own. And I mean, I think the other thing now is it costs a lot more money to break a band, because there's so many more avenues that you've got to have covered, and it takes more time. I would say about a 3-year cycle would break an artist. Now I would say it can be up to 5 or 6. And imagine the amount of money that goes into that. I've just scared myself.
I mean, with that on the money side of things, with the label and Lostprophets, what was the final financial impact? Because I presume you had a lot of money in the back catalogue that suddenly doesn't...
It's just disappeared, yeah. Well, put it this way, I don't do the label anymore, do I? It took me a long time to get my head around that. And because, I mean, I'd spent a long time doing it, and it was my identity. I mean, my Twitter's still Julie Visible. I still sign in as Julie Visible for a lot of stuff because it's still really part of me. But I mean, the whole impact on that was that we just couldn't afford to sign other artists because obviously money that comes in gets paid back to an artist. The residuals come in and keep us afloat and then allow us to expand on other people. And that just didn't happen anymore. That was really sad, actually, to be quite honest.
So that literally was like the end of the label?
No, the label like sort of stopped in about 2006. So it was, 2016, beg your pardon. But that left a scar on me, I think, really, because I'd felt it was part of my identity had been taken away as well. And I felt like people were looking at me slightly.
Yeah, I guess like the knock-on effect is that it affects everyone involved. So, I mean, the PR aspect of that, was that a big deal, or was it just sort of like we can't do anything, we need to keep quiet? Or?
We just have to step away. I mean, I couldn't comment because I wasn't there with the lads as much as when they were on the road. But also, they weren't there when these things are happening. So it's just the worst case scenario of feeling powerless, I suppose.
What happened then with the back catalogue of that? Because obviously at this point you've also got other bands that are really successful. Mm-hmm. You got Bring Me, you've got Bullet for Valentine. Yeah. Like their back catalogue must be worth something. Bring
Me was I signed the catalogue over to Sony. Actually, the rest of the contract, and actually, ironically, I now work on their catalogue at Sony. So it's 360 degrees, really. I also work with Cradle of Filth, which I work with on Cacophonous. So can't escape these people, but not that I'd want to. But so that's back in, and I work with Bullet again at Sony now. So it's a very small world.
It is. You've got it sewn up.
Yeah.
I mean, going back then to Bring Me, what was the process with that? How did you discover them? And
that's probably one of my favourite things, actually. I saw them at a gig at the Borderline with a band called The Red Chord. You should remember those guys?
Yeah, okay.
God, everybody's going to be Googling all these really bad metalcore bands. So I saw them, and then I realised they were signed to a friend's label, which was 30 Days of Night, which was Jamie Farrell, who was a mate of mine. He'd moved to Leeds. He was in a band called Lab Rat that I signed to Visible Noise as well. So Jamie had signed This Is What the Edge of Your Seat Is Made For. So we bought that off Jamie and then just signed the contract with them moving forwards. So we signed them just as they turned 18.
Wow.
Which is terrifying anyway when you see where they are now.
It's incredible.
But they've always been, I mean, I always say with Bring Me, it's like dolly mixtures. It's a real mixture of people that get on really well, who've all got their own strengths and they've all got their own like sort of foibles. But Ollie's always been ahead of the curve, I think, musically and creatively. Because I mean, the whole MySpace thing, when you look back at that now, it's so cringe, isn't it? Oh my God, it was your top 9. Oh,
that was such a big deal. In college, I remember the girls sitting around with notepads and they'd sit and they'd write out their top. Was it 8 or? I'm sure at one point you could add up to 64, and they'd sit and they'd list the 64 people and discuss who would get onto the list.
Get out more, innit? God, what's wrong with you? It's weird. Who's got the time for that?
I know, it's crazy. I mean, I remember seeing Bring Me for the first time at the Barfly, which now I guess is the Institute in Birmingham.
God, yeah.
And I didn't know who they were when I went to the show. I was just in Birmingham, I was in the subway, and one of my friends' big brother, who was like 2 years older than me, and I just thought it was cool as fuck. Like, he had tattoo. He was the first person I'd seen with tattoo sleeves, yeah. Rick Meek. And he came in and was like, "Oh, you guys going to the Bring Me show?" And we're like, "Yeah, obviously." Like,
yeah.
No idea who it was. And by chance, I'd done my work experience at the venue. So, because I would have been like 15.
Birmingham Mafia, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I literally like messaged the guy that had given me the work experience, being like, "Dude, can you get me in?" We went and saw the gig, and then they actually stayed at my friend's house because they had nowhere to stay. So they were just on stage. They were like, "Come and talk to us on the merch stand if we can crash on your floor." So he went straight over and was like, "You can crash on my floor." So we sat up like all night just playing Guitar Hero. I don't think any of the band actually went to bed. It was the only time I've ever played Guitar Hero. But yeah, that was when I was about 15. So that was how I first saw them.
Was it when they were headlining it, or were they supporting?
I think they headlined it. I can't remember. They're the only band I remember from the night.
Yeah.
So I guess whoever it was with, it says a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was how I saw them for the first time. I mean, how quickly was it with them that it sort of exploded and Ollie became the popular
I think Ollie struggled with that kind of stuff actually early doors, because I think they really wanted to be in a band. And I remember sitting in the Holiday Inn in Camden when they'd been playing the London Barfly actually, and telling Ollie's mum and dad drunkenly that they were going to be the biggest thing ever. And it was like, and Janice, Matt Nichols' mum as well, and honestly really believing it, because they were a driving force. They're a very closed group. As in, if they don't want people there, they'll just lock down and they'll just they'll close ranks. It's like a little gang, isn't it? But I genuinely think that they've always been quite superpowered on that front, because they've always wanted it so much. And again, this goes back to the provinces thing, because I've always experienced, and I'm sorry, London, but I've always experienced people really wanting stuff more when they're not from London, or they're not living in a house in Chiswick with mum and dad. Do you know what I mean? So when people really need to get out of a crappy town or a crappy job, or they're working at Asda or whatever, they really, really want to get out of there. And I think that was a big driving force for them. I mean, Lee Malia, again, another insanely talented person. And I mean, when they had Jordan, I think adding that element in was instrumental. I mean, we did an album called Suicide Season that was recorded in Gothenburg with Frederick Nordstrom, actually. And we'd brought in a producer at that time. It's like this tiny little electronic producer that was a friend of a friend called Jamie. And we kind of just locked him in the studio with them for like a month. I feel really bad for him, because he was kind of a very different personality, and again, closing ranks. But I still think that possibly changed the way that Ollie thinks about music and metalcore, because that's when things started moving on. It's like when we did Suicide Season, Jamie's Electronica was there, and then we did Suicide Season cut up to see about remixes and collaborations and stuff. So I'm hoping that was like kind of a step to where they are now. But I mean, obviously, I'm no Jordan. You know what I mean? I mean, he's an insanely talented creature as well. But going back to how long it took, I mean, Suicide Season was more of the jump off point. I think Count Your Blessings was for the purists.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff does sound like scopping a biscuit tin full of stones downstairs, really. Thank God for Pro Tools. But it's just, people are scared of things like that. And I remember, oh God, there was this one terrible Kerrang review that we had on Count Your Blessings, and I think I've still kept it. I think it's still in the back of a diary, because I used to look at it about once a week and just get really enraged. Because it's somebody that's like, you know, it's just a really, really crap review, but it doesn't say why. It's just like sort of spewing venom. This person, I just don't think liked the band. It was nothing to do with how good the album was or anything like that. But it's like sort of, you know, like a load of Sheffield numpties. She just wasn't keen, you know. And it was just, and it still pissed me off. I'll find it. I'll send you a scan of it. I've got it.
I'd love to see that.
A woman called Catherine. Well, I'll find it. Honestly, expect it in your inbox this week.
I love that you remember her name.
Oh, don't. I've got a very long memory for stuff like this.
We had one this week.
She's no longer a journalist, by the way. She's alive, but no longer a journalist.
She's got nothing else going. What was the sort of financial success, and how did that affect the label? Was that a big thing? Or was it sort of just in the background because you already had these other bands that were slaying?
Yeah, I mean, it was, we were, and I mean, for the record, I'm not a millionaire or anything like that. Yeah. I live in a 2-bedroom flat in Finsbury Park. But the financial success was good, you know, but I mean, realistically speaking, we still did everything ourselves. We still tour supported the band. We tour supported the first run on Warped. We tour supported when they went out to Russia, which I was kind of going, don't go. And they went, and they came back in one piece, and I'm still shocked about that. But I mean, it wasn't as impactful, ironically, as the Lostprophets success.
Yeah.
Because I think we put so much money into Bring Me at the time. And then and plus our success wasn't the level of success that they had now.
Yeah,
we did the work and the discovery and like the ground building and stuff like that, and then it took off from there.
Is that back catalogue worth more now with their success than it was at the time?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. But I mean, you also have to appreciate that their musical form has evolved somewhat.
Yeah.
So I mean, what they're doing with like sort of with Throne, for instance, is very different to Pray for Plagues.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you still get your purists out there, you know, and then you get the people who sold out, and it's like, well, it's like, what do you think? It's like Bowie evolves, you know. Well, the Beatles evolved.
Yeah. It's hilarious with that, because with the club night, if we put up a poll on Instagram and we say, what do you prefer, Old Me, Bring You Bring Me, almost 100% Old Bring Me. But if we do a club night and it's Old Bring Me, no one turns up. If we do a club night and it's New Bring Me, sold out.
Exactly, because it's the difference between like sort of accessibility and the people who stand at the back at like a Deaf Heaven gig just nodding.
Well, it's very cool to say that you do that. It's very cool to say I prefer Old Bring Me.
Yeah.
But, like, the reality is everyone loves the new shit, which is why it's so fucking huge.
And it's very hard to dance to Old Bring Me as well,
Yes.
to be fair.
I mean, that's another big thing with the club is if we play anything you can't dance to, like the girls go outside.
Oh, yeah.
And then the guys go outside because they're only going to go where the girls go. So,
Dance floor psychology.
yeah, that's how it works. I guess the other obvious band to me then is Bullet.
Yeah.
So was that the same sort of thing? And
Just for me personally, to be quite honest. I mean, that was... We worked with a guy called Martin Dodd, who... I don't know, I don't think he still works with the band, actually. But Martin had come to us and to see if we would help work it in the UK as a specialist rock label, really. And I was already working with Sony. It was a Sony BMG kind of deal. And we said, yeah, absolutely. So we did all the groundwork for that on the EP and the Poison. And then, like, sort of our, like, kind of license lapsed, really, on that. But again, with Bullets, it was definitely... Wales was behind them 100%. And I mean... You see people's families would come to like the coal exchange gigs and everybody looks like miners. Do you know what I mean? It's like where I'm from. It's exactly the same kind of people. Everybody's like either a rugby player or a miner. You know what I mean? And all of them would take your head off on a Friday night over a bag of chips. I'm telling you. But Bullet, again, it's a great wealth of like sort of good feeling about them. And I mean, Bullet also had a really good home in the US at the time as well. I mean, do you remember the label Trustkill?
nope.
Google that because all your favourite bands are on it and they're doing a lot of reissues at the moment. Really nice vinyl reissues. But they were absolutely brilliantly supportive. So the Major did a really, really clever thing in that they gave the two indie labels who are specialists in their own field and knew the scene. They gave the band to us to work and then took him back off us. And now I'm working it again. But there you go, 360 degrees.
What's it like then when you have some success in the States?
It's mind-blowing, but also you need your own people on the ground over there because with Lostprophets to start with, I was doing everything myself and that was absolutely, I think for about 4 years, I worked from like 9 in the morning till about 11 at night, dealing with US street teams and stuff like that, and that was exhausting. And that's the beauty of hindsight and also the beauty of people in LA just not knowing that there are other time zones in the world, which is a bit annoying. But US success, it's phenomenal, and that can burn through really, really quickly as well. I mean, we've got Hot Milk over there at the moment, and they're absolutely smashing it. And Bury Tomorrow will go over there soon as well. So that's all starting to move.
With that as a label deal then, how does it work with you finding people over there? Do you?
Now or then?
Both, I guess.
Then it was bloody hard work. Then we worked with people like Trustkill. We did a Bring Me license with E-Rake first off for the first record. And then we worked with Epitaph, actually. And I have to say, Epitaph is probably one of the best label co-working experiences in my life. What a wonderful bunch of people. And people who are real music fans. Brett is like second to none. He really knows his shit. He really, really does know his shit. And he's quite a formidable human on meetings as well.
What does a license sort of consist of and look like then when you're going over there? What were the negotiation points that they'd be looking for?
It's like how long's a piece of string? I mean, the E-Rake license was really simple. It was pretty much like sort of, we'll give you it for like X amount of years or X amount of money. And they would tour support and deal with a lot of the on-the-ground stuff. Because, I mean, we had issues. I think once with Bring Me, we'd had an issue with Matt, the drummer, not being able to go out there. And it was like a 6-week tour with someone like Kitty or something weird it was at the time. They're back. But so we had to find another replacement drummer and stuff. And I mean, it wouldn't have worked if it was me doing it from a tiny office in Portobello Road, you know. So E-Rake were a brilliant partner on that as well. And I mean, Al Dawson, who runs the US office, he's such a music fan, and he's been around as long as I have, so he knows everybody. So it's a great relationship to have and a lifesaver, put it that way.
Do you still have to do all the same sort of work with them, or are they just getting you to approve things?
In what way?
With the promotion and the releases and the things that
now
you're doing over there, yeah.
As in at the Major? Yeah. Oh God, I still do absolutely everything. I mean, Music for Nations is still a really small entity at Sony. It's like sort of there's 3 of us, but we plug into different parts of the building. We'll plug into the creative team, the digital marketing teams and stuff like that. But when you're looking at a label like Columbia or RCA being like 40 people, it's a bit different. But I like being small and scrappy. I call it agile and perfectly formed.
With Music for Nations then, how did that come about with you getting involved in that coming back? Because that, I think, had been gone for quite a while.
The irony with Music for Nations is they stole Cradle of Filth off me years ago when I was working with them, and it was always a bit of a headbutt scenario. But since then, Andy Black, who ran it, is a mate. But I'd worked with Sony for probably 25 years, consulting on things. So obviously I'd worked with Lostprophets and Bullet with Sony. Lostprophets I'd signed and then licensed back to Sony. Bullet came to me. So it was about a bit of a two-way street. And I'd also consulted on... Oh, God. Do you remember Metro Station?
Yeah.
Yeah, I consulted on Metro Station, Nothing But Thieves. And, oh, God, there's another band that were from Birmingham who were like sort of Go Audio.
Right.
Who are great, really nice lads. And actually they're really successful in their own right now in music. So I'd gone into Sony about once a week for probably about 15, 20 years anyway. And I'd known a lot of people there. And obviously when the Prophets thing happened, I had a bit of a wobble, bit of a crisis of conscience about being in indie. And because I was attacked for all of that stuff as well. I had, not physically,
yeah,
but I was getting a lot of flack on the internet, and I was getting sort of messages to the office and stuff. Photos of the office door, that was the scary one. Really scary one. So that was obviously dealt with.
So was there a lot of that? Did it fall on you disproportionately?
Yeah, because I suppose that the label wasn't a label. It was me. And I suppose if you look at Music for Nations, it's Sony. Yeah. You know, it's not the same kind of... We've got a great barrier there if we need it, but I mean, we're still very accessible anyway. But I mean, for Visible Noise, it was always just me. And that was probably a really terrifying 3 years, I would say, for me.
Is that how long it lasted with you getting...
Yeah, it was horrible.
Shit.
Yeah, that was... Just don't be visible on the scene, people. but it went away. And I mean, obviously why I was nowhere near what the lads had.
Yeah, of course.
But with the label stuff, I suppose it's a logical progression for me, because after the wobble with that, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to keep progressing. I also wanted to keep learning, right? And I think when you're sitting in an office on your own, and you must get it with the projects that you're working as well at the moment.
Well, this project, the 1000 Lights, which for anyone that doesn't know, we're doing a massive charity fundraiser for mental health on the 18th of August. This will probably come out after that, so that was a pointless plug. But the most exciting part of this for me is that I've got to work with people that are infinitely more experienced and knowledgeable. Whereas in the club, it's sort of just me and a couple of the people, and I've been doing it for 15 years. I know everything that we need to do with the club, so I'm not really learning anything. Yeah. But going in and sitting in meetings with the guys from DMX for the lighting and the screens, and 22 Live for the PA and the production we've got involved, that's just fascinating. It's really, really fun for me just sitting in the conversation. I don't say that much, but I'm just I'm taking it in, I'm absorbing what's going on, and I'm just sitting there sort of smiling, and you can see them look at me being like, fucking, why is he smirking at me? And I'm just thinking, this is so cool. I've learned so much more than I knew 6 months ago because of doing this.
But you should be continually learning, and we're working in industry that facilitates learning. I mean, the people that you're speaking to as well, props on the people who are coming in today, by the way, because it's two great people as well. But you should always be learning, you should always be expanding, and as soon as you stop learning, you start stagnating. And people want to move with you if you're moving forward, you're doing something different, you're thinking outside the box, you're trying to be disruptive in a creative way. Yeah. You know, and I mean, I think sitting in an office in Portobello, which was quite frankly held together by dirt and coffee grounds, but sitting there on my own all of the time, it was just not having someone to bounce off. It can be quite soul destroying as well. Yeah. You know, so I mean, when the opportunity came up, I was like, yes, I'd love to do it. It took us a while to sort it out. And my friend Joel was there at the time anyway. He'd been doing catalogue reissues. So I kind of went in to work with him and reactivated his frontline. So it's just, I mean, it's a logical progression, but it's something that I'd been doing with Sony anyway, kind of thing, but I was just doing it officially and in-house as opposed to floating on the periphery and being an independent label.
So if a band signs to Music for Nations now, is that effectively being signed to a major?
Yeah. We are a major label, and I think actually the Sony entity would agree that we do work a little bit differently, because you would always speak to myself or Tom, who works with me. You'd always get through to us too, so it's not like you're just going to get fobbed off with the intern or something like that, you know. And I mean, when we sign someone, we're incredibly hands-on, because we're such a small entity that when we sign something, we have to make it work. And otherwise you wouldn't get signed anyway. We have to believe in it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe the feel for a band coming and sign is that you sign into an indie, but actually it's got the machine of a...
That's what we try and... Yeah, that's exactly what we try and do. As in, we've got an independent mindset and we've got an independent approach. As in, we don't have a cookie cutter approach. Not that I'm saying majors do, but sometimes you go into somewhere and it's done in a specific process.
Yeah.
But we will tailor make every single artist's experience to play to their strengths, as it were. And generally, when an artist comes in with a team, we keep that team, because I've never been in the habit of, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I don't think that you should break up teams that have been working well. And if it's been working well, that's why they got signed. So bring those people for the journey. And I've looked at that with a lot of artists. And it's like people who are really insanely brilliant tour managers now started out with their mates. You know, they were right knobhead at the time, didn't know anything, would break everything. And now they're like sort of the tour managing to the depths of Wembley Arena and Wembley Stadium. So it's nice to see.
What are you looking for with the team then? Does it make a big difference to you? Would you look at a band that doesn't have any team and be put off, or...?
I'd never say never to anything, really. I mean, I read loads of music biographies. I'm a massive nerd on stuff like that. And I still genuinely believe that, like, algorithms and stuff aside, if somebody doesn't have the music, it don't work.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't have the belief, it don't work, because the tiniest wobble with you'll just fall off the project. And it's not what you've almost got to be in your mind a part of that band or a part of that entity. So it's so important to you, it has to work. And that served me well over like 3 decades and some. It's also served me terribly when people are turning into idiots. But 90% of the people that we work with have been absolutely fantastic, and they believe in it even more than we do. And that's what we need. We'll work as hard as the people that are working with us, you know. If you're not going to put the work in, but we wouldn't sign you. That's the thing.
Before you were at Music for Nations, you had your management company.
Oh God, yeah. Ooh.
Is that not a great experience for that reaction?
I set that up because I thought it was easy. You know,
and it's
you see these managers bimbling through life. I thought it was easy. Not easy at all. Really, it was horrible. I would never do that again. But I mean, if there's any young managers out there listening to this, it's like, don't stop, but make sure you've got a fallback position, because you're never going to buy your castle in the south of France off the proceeds of your local band. You know what I mean?
What was it about that process then that was so bad, or
it wasn't bad? It was just. It's blood, sweat and tears. It's 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Unless you're dealing with a band the size of, I don't know, your Last Dinner Parties or your Metallicas or something like that, you're not really going to earn anything that is substantial.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got to have a number of those as well. So it's just, it's the genuinely mental stress, because you start thinking everybody's your child, which you do with a band anyway. But you start thinking that everybody's your child, and it takes up so much of your time. And I mean, I managed a band called Evile for a while. It's like a thrash band signed to Earache.
Yeah.
And we had the terrible experience of one of the members passed away on tour. It was horrendous. And that whole scenario just scared the living daylights out of me. And it was just, we had to basically repatriate the body. I had to take care of his mum. And it was absolutely horrible. And that was like sort of a friend scenario as well. Yeah. And then I worked with Fearless Vampire Killers, who are lovely people, actually. He's one of the most talented people I know. Name check for Condomaniac there. If anybody likes chili sauces, it's amazing. I'm obsessed. And then I looked after Lady Starlight, actually, which is Lady Gaga's tour DJ. I looked after her for about 3 years. That I did make a decent bit of money off. But it's just, I don't know, sometimes I just want to give people a check and just say, get on with it. You know, when people are just like, oh, can you wake me up at 7:30 because I need to get ready to go on site at Download? And I'm like, 7:30? We're not going on site till 2. And they're like, it'll take me that long to get ready. I'm like, what? I'm putting some wellies on. And that's it, tie my hair up. That's about it. But it's a fascinating experience, and I have every respect for people like Jamie Osman, who manages like sort of big bands and small bands and growing bands, because it's just having the mindset to do it, having the strategic thinking, financing everything, helping people with like sort of their ridiculous visa needs, which is just stupid as well now, thank you Brexit. It's just it's an all-encompassing job, and as a manager really you need to be part of a company, I think, really. So I mean, fair play to the indie managers, because I didn't have the wherewithal with it, because I was running the label and a publishing company at the same time.
So I mean, Jamie said similar sort of thing. Obviously he's come at the other end and he loves being a manager. But when he was managing Def Havana, he said there was a strange sort of period in time for him personally, because the band had huge amounts of success, and he visibly looked successful because of that. But because he weren't really making anything, there was like this weird thing where he felt like it was like imposter syndrome, because everyone was looking at him like a success, but he wasn't actually earning. Yeah,
it's like reverse imposter syndrome. Yeah. That's insane, but that's so true. That's so true, because people see you as a manager and think, I mean, it starts from the whole people who are musicians must be sitting on their, you know, their Scrooge McDuck level mountains of gold, when they're not. And a lot of artists are still doing a day job as well as doing everything else. And it's hard. It takes the toll on people a lot, mentally and physically.
Yeah. On that point with the artists working day jobs, what sort of venue size, because that's an easy visual thing for people to imagine, do you need to be at before it's a full-time job?
Genuinely, I don't think there's any answer to that, because it depends how long the tour is, depends how much you're getting paid. You know, I mean, realistically speaking, you would need to be doing like sort of 6 months a year of Brixton-sized venues, I would say, to make that viable, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Imagine on that. It's ridiculous. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of streams for artists, because it's not just live, it's not just music, there's publishing, there's sync, there's brand deals and stuff as well. There's merch deals, but it's just, there's a lot out there for an artist to consider. And I mean, I think, again, going back to 98 when I started Visible Noise, it felt like a much simpler time than now. You know, it would be a release album. Brilliant. You know, it was just, and even at that point, it wasn't even really about singles per se. Maybe you'll do 1 or 2 singles or videos, but now you've got to strategically plan everything with digital. You've got to work out what your your remarket and retargeting strategies are. You've got to work out data collection and what your mailing lists are looking like and how healthy they are and how old your data is. It's just, there's so much you've got to think about. And this is the bonus for me about being in a large structure, because there's a lot of this that I wouldn't have been able to do as an indie. And I mean, some of it didn't even know existed until I went into the major full time. But it's a completely different approach. And I still 100% believe that it's not all about algorithms, and it can't be, because that completely takes the creative humanity and warmth out of music. And that's why people gravitate towards music. It's not because it's AI generated. It's not because it's robot sounds. You know, people need like the emotion and the stuff behind it.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest sort of change over the last 25 years then, with all those things happening? If you're a band that's starting now and you're going to have some success, what is the biggest thing that's different?
Oh, get your digital presence in line. And I have this conversation with people every day, and it part of me, my soul dies every time I have to have a conversation about all this, because it's not. As a musician, can you imagine telling Ozzy Osbourne to do a flipping TikTok when he was like in the height of his mania? Do you know what I mean? It's not going to happen. And it's just the fact that artists have got to be all things to all people. Artists should be artists, they should be creators, they should be musicians. And by default, the business that we're working in is we now have the artists having to be influencers, content creators, video directors, photographers, fashion people. You know, it's just, you know, what about like a numpty sitting in his bedroom in Bridgend who's sitting there playing a great riff with his mates to go down like sort of the youth club every weekend and rehearse, and they have a lovely time and they might create something great out of it. If they don't have, you know, 200,000 people following them on TikTok or Instagram or anything, it's like, our label's going to look at them. Us, yes, without a doubt, because I've been there, I've done that, and I've seen it. I just feel bad that artists now have to basically have the knowledge, have the insight, and have to watch all of these different things going on in the world in order to be successful. It's insane.
How successful do you think someone could be? I don't know how to phrase this, but if you use Ollie Sykes as the example, whether he posts or doesn't post, he's still an influencer. Like, he could stop doing anything and he'd just walk down the road and he'd still be an influencer.
But he's reached a level of God tier there, hasn't he, really, in social media?
But like, taking away the fame, though, as an individual, he can't exist without having charisma. He just does.
You'd be surprised. When they first started, Ollie was he was a lot more withdrawn, and people used to think he was really arrogant in the early days, and he was quiet, and he just didn't want that stuff around him. He's never liked doing press or anything like that. But I think that level of artist, that's been a long time in the coming, though. That's been like 15, 18 years.
Yeah.
Really? That's long. Most bands don't last that long. I've signed artists who will split up 6 months after the album comes out, and it's infuriating. But he's been able to ride a lot of waves, but he's a polymath. And I mean, I'd love to spend a day in his brain, because I'd like to see what actually goes on in there, because I can imagine there's about 20 things bouncing around at the same time. But I mean, he's smart design-wise, fashion sense is brilliant. He was always ahead of the curve with the whole MySpace thing.
Yeah, MySpace dropped dead, all that coming out at the same time.
And I mean, that was absolutely mad, and nobody else was really doing that. I think it was Famous were doing it, weren't they? Stars and Straps, and that was about it. And he's managed to do that and still retain all of that. And I don't know how he does that with being in a band and being on the road and having all of that, but where he's still very involved with it. Not many people like that. He's an ultimate polymath.
Do you think that sort of charisma then he's taught or learnt over the period of time?
I think it's innate. I think it was just unearthed. I think it's in him. His family are really interesting. His mum and dad are really good people, actually, and they're real characters, as is his brother. But I think that kind of stuff is unearthed, and it's about confidence and trust. And I think it's trust in himself, more than anything. So I think, these are once in a generation music personality, I think.
Do you think a band can become that big if they don't have that charisma or the ability to adapt to it? Or if they don't have a single member? Because the whole band obviously is extremely creative and talented, but he stands out as an individual. If a band doesn't have that standout, are they ever going to reach that level?
Without Svengali? But yes, I think, but it also depends on the level of fanaticism. It depends on storytelling. It's how they portray themselves. It's the way they market, the way they and their teams market themselves. But I think if you've got like a Jared Leto or something like that, you've got another person who's, and bearing in mind, Ollie has always been across 2 or 3 different things. I mean, he's culturally relevant, not just musically relevant. Yeah. That's the thing, and that's a huge key to the music industry in general. It's like, don't stay in your lane. I think everybody that we work with that's been successful has always had interests outside, a drop D. They've always had interests outside. Oh, look, I've got a gold-plated plug for my amp. It's always outside that. And it's always whether they're a gamer or a film nerd, or they like going fishing, or they love cooking, or like a Jono, he loves his food. Like he's like sort of only scrans and he's done all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting. They're plugged into life. Yeah. Which I think is important.
Yeah, I guess that's a great way to actually look at it. That's where the charisma comes from.
Yeah. Love and life.
What would be the advice then that you'd give to a band if they've just started, they want to join a record label and they're trying to approach labels? What would be the best way for them to start approaching and to look at that?
Number 1, don't be a dick, which is the best one. Genuinely, it's like, don't do it too early. Do your prep, do your research. If you're going to approach labels, find out about the label, find out about the people there, find out about the bands that they've signed, find out about who they're working with. Have a really, really good shop front on your socials and your digital. Don't send CDs, because I got one the other day and I was just like, oh, so cringe. I don't even have anything to play it on in the office anymore, do you know what I mean? But just prepare yourselves, like sort of present the best authentic version of the band that you can. Have an image, have storytelling, have something about you, have an element of difference. Don't stay in your lane, don't be scared. Don't copy people. It's all these kind of things. Go and invent something, invent a genre. Do something that nobody else is doing. Nobody wants the next Bring Me, nobody wants the next Metallica, nobody wants the next Lana Del Rey. No, well, maybe they do. I don't know. Not me. But all this kind of stuff, it's be yourself and try and create something different. Look at culture. Look at everything else. Look at what's going on in the world. Possibly not this week, but it's important to have that kind of broad world view.
What's the order that you should be like sort of trying to put together a team? So like you manage your agent, the label, everything else. What sort of, if you're starting from scratch, what would you suggest being like, this is the order to approach?
Genuinely get your shit together as a band first before you even think about anything like that. If you get yourselves together and you do something that's great and genuinely creative and you build a network, speak to other artists, people will start coming to you. A label as a young artist now is possibly the last thing that you need.
Yeah.
Because there are ways and means of doing it. We're all big fans of Bandcamp in our office. Thank you, Bandcamp Fridays during lockdown, for the amount of crap that is in my living room. T-shirts, merch, you name it, it's all there. But that kind of stuff, you can speak to aggregators about getting stuff into Spotify and all of the DSPs. There's a million ways of doing it. You can do it yourself. I genuinely think as well with young artists, the more that you learn about the way that the industry is structured, the more it'll set you in good stead moving forward, because you'll know what you want, you'll know what you need. Read a lot of books about it. There's some really, really interesting ones, actually. I can send you some links. But don't rush into things, because you've only got one chance to get in front of a label. It's not like Simon Cowell or anything like that, where come back next year, you failed at the judges' houses. People will remember you if you've cocked up.
Is that a good point then, to be like, you should understand the industry as much as you can?
Absolutely.
Because there's so many bands. So in Birmingham, next to where we have the club, we've got the studios. So every day, all day, so to rehearsal studios, 12 rooms. It's UPRAWR Studios now. It used to be called Meadows Rehearsals.
I didn't know that.
Literally part of the same building. So it's 12 rehearsal rooms. It's obviously unsigned bands all day, every day. Yeah. We have big bands come in, but that's who's rehearsing generally. 99% of them, if you said to them, do you want to come to this seminar and learn about music, they'd just go, it's the manager's job.
So far from it. Managers' jobs have changed so much. Managers and bands, a lot of the artists we work with self-manage. A lot of them co-manage with a manager because they know what they want. Only the band really knows what they want. And genuinely, if you can forewarn and forearm yourself for what you're going to go into. The music industry, it's like shark soup. It's like, there's a lot of great people here. There's also a lot of people who you should maybe educate yourself about. And that's with the best will in the world. I've only ever had great experiences in the industry I work in, but I know a lot of people who haven't had such great experiences. But even there's like industry 101s that are so easy to do. And 1 hour out of your day could make so much difference, just to explain the difference between recording, publishing, masters, ownership, sync, all the other things you can be doing, merch deals. Even if you're going on tour and when you're going to go into a venue and they're going to take 25% of your merch, a lot of young bands won't know that, and it's brutal.
Yeah.
And it's the difference between being able to afford to eat and petrol on the road and not. So you should really know about these things.
What advice then would you give as a last thing for someone if they wanted to start their own record label?
Don't. No, I'm joking.
I knew that was going to be the answer.
Genuinely think about what you're doing. Think about how much time it's going to take up. It's not all sitting on beaches and flying to LA. Trust me, it is far from it. It's more like sitting in Birmingham in dark rooms, which I've done for a lot. When it was the Slaughterhouse Studios, loved it. But just think about it and sort of have a plan and make sure that you choose the right people who are going to work with you, not against you. If there's going to be a financial element to it, work out how much you can lose, because you will. Yeah. You'll win as well, but it's like you've got to work out what your deals are and how you want to do it. And just be really careful. And also bearing in mind that when you are running a label and you're signing an artist, you're affecting their lives, which is what I always think. It's like, Bring Me's lives would have been very different if things hadn't happened when they did, Obviously, Bullet are still going, which is fantastic. 20 years of the Poison, terrifying. Does that make you feel old? Very good. Yeah, really terrifying. But yeah, it would be great to see young people actually being out there and doing that kind of stuff. But now, you can just do it as a fully digital label. So it's different to having to press CDs or sort of make vinyl and stuff all the time. Look at Bandcamp and see what people are doing on there.
Awesome. I think that's probably everything then for today. Thank you for coming in and talking. Is there anything you want to promote or mention before we finish?
No, just check out MFN Artists. Berry Tomorrow doing stuff, Hot Milk are smashing it, and we have some new stuff coming out from Witch Fever. Oh, and we've just signed a new artist called Vlur from Glasgow. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you to everyone that's listened. If you'd like to watch it, we're available on YouTube. Please like and subscribe wherever you hear podcasts.